In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Family, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles Zackary King, storyteller, community advocate, and someone who believes deeply in the power of truth, clarity, and conversation. Tonight, we're stepping into a topic that affects every household in this country, whether you follow politics closely or try your best to avoid it. The political discourse in America has become louder, more divided, and more confusing than ever. People hear numbers like $1.2 trillion. They hear about government shutdowns. They hear about deficits and debt. But very few people get the translation into everyday life. My goal tonight is simple: to make politics plain, to break down what's happening in Washington in a way that connects to your kitchen table, your healthcare, your paycheck, and your future. We're going to talk about the recent Senate bill, the national deficit debt, and state of healthcare and subsidies, and what all of this means as we move forward and move toward the midterm elections. This is not about partisanship. This is about understanding, because when people understand the system, they can navigate it. When people understand the stakes, they can vote with intention. And when people understand their power, they can shape the future. So let's get into it with honesty, clarity, and the courage to face the truth head on. Before we get all the way into this show, I want to say to those of you that are watching, as you are watching, please, if there's any questions that you have, you can put your questions in the chat, and I promise you that I will read your question aloud and answer your question to the best of my ability. So, as we get into this, I want to start off by just saying, I want to clarify the difference between political noise versus political reality. Political noise, you hear people say many, many things, and people are out just doing scuttlebutt, just to get rises out of people, to see what kind of reactions they get, and just have people thinking and saying many things. But the political reality, or the things that actually affect you, the individual, it doesn't matter if they're positive or if they're adverse. These are things that you guys need to understand. And what I want to make sure that we go through tonight is we separate that difference between the noise and the reality. We want to also talk about how policy decisions affect everyday life. These policies that these folk are passing up in Washington, D.C., the thing is, it's said that's true, and that is, people, the top 1% has actually bought the power and the policy of this country. That everything that happens in this country is all about that top 1%. So for us, that's below that, beneath that, we're all in situations to where we only get a piece of the pie. And if you're at that very, very bottom of the totem pole, primarily you might not get any of the pie. And so we're going to make sure we clarify that. We also want to clarify the importance of clarity heading into the midterm elections. These midterm elections are determining right now what's the outlook, what's the shape of the country going to look like. Should we even trust these people that we vote for, the people that are in office? How do we know that they're doing our bidding and taking care of our interests? And in just saying that before we do anything else, we know that that's not happening. So unless you got a stake in the game where you can pay these folk that's in these political machines that are operating this government, you're not going to get anything worthwhile. But we're going to talk about how we can change that. So I want to start with asking you guys this question. It's not a rhetorical question. It was either last Thursday or last Friday. How many of you remember, or how many of you have knowledge of the $1.2 trillion bill the Senate passed in order to fund a part of the government while the government is shut down? Now, I want to say that again. The Senate passed a $1.2 trillion bill. And in that $1.2 trillion bill, it is to fund a part of the government while the government is shut down. Now, we're used to hearing that some of this has taken place. But if you think about $1.2 trillion, that's a lot of money for partial government. Okay. Now, they haven't had that vote yet if the government's going to shut down or not. Now, one thing I can say, and I'd like to stay honest and transparent about, is when it comes to that, I do not know if there are triggers in this bill when it was passed that will have it go into effect for, particular things happen. That I do not know. I can't tell you that at this point. I am still researching to find out about that, because my honest opinion about that, as I'm still looking to find out how this works, is that it seems like there's a slush fund that's being made available. And so again, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I will say that in my opinion, I do think that that there's going to be a slush fund that's being set aside for in case situations that if this does happen, then there's going to be money to be played with to do whatever is necessary when it comes to this administration. Now, when the Senate passed this bill, we know that it was designed to prevent a February government shutdown. Now, in this case, the government still has to pay its bills. Now, they still have to pay the bills, but if the bills are not paid and we just passed a $1.2 trillion bill to do a funding that's not do that, what we should be thinking about, and most people would want to think about, is this going to be more money on top of the government's debt that has to be paid that most likely won't get paid? Now, when I talk about that and when I ask that question, I want you guys to think in terms of one thing, and that is when you have a credit card and you use money on that credit card, which means this is money you don't have, but you're able to use this. So you're playing with other people's money. So let's say, I'm going to give you an example. Okay, you got a $5,000 credit limit on your card. Now, you have things that need to get done. So with that $5,000 credit limit that you got, you go out and you spend $2,500. When you spend $2,500, they calculate based on that interest how much it is that you have to pay, right, on a monthly basis. So let's say you don't use the card again, but you still got to pay back that $2,500. When you when you go to pay on that card, and let's just say I'm just running rough estimate numbers. Let's say on that $2,500, your monthly payments to pay that back, the minimum payment is $300. So if the minimum payment is $300, and you're using money that you don't have, what do you think happens if you don't pay that monthly minimum balance of $300? It sounds simple. We know that, okay, well, you're going to have to pay a late fee, and the interest, it occurs and it does more. Okay. So now let's just get to the point that you've gone basically 2 months now, and you're still behind, and you have not made that payment. So you know that that payment is going to increase within the second month, but it's going to increase almost double the amount because your interest is still accruing. And then on top of that, they've got ways, and they've got these creative ways of actually creating how much you're going to owe. So now let's say you've gotten into that second month, and you now owe $800 is your minimum payment. Now, when you get to that $800, if you didn't pay three, do you really have $800 to pay? Now, I'm asking you that because what's happening here in the U.S. and what they're doing to the debt is that under this administration alone, and it has not been, well, it's just a little bit over a year now, has actually added like maybe $8 trillion to the debt, to the deficit, however you want to call it. Now, with that, where's the responsibility, but also where's this money going? Where is the money? So with them passing this partial bill, I'm not really happy about that, and I don't know if many other people would be happy about this as well. But I think one of the things that we should be looking at when we think about it is, why is it that we've got this going on and we just can't pay the bills? Because some people like to spend this money loosely. They like to be loose about all the things that's happening. But the people that are affected most are the people like you and I that are not a part of that top 1%. So, how that money starts to get paid is we on the bottom have to actually pay two, three, four times, sometimes five times more of what's normally paid, from taxes to anything that's going to support not just the state government, but the federal government. And so when we have to do that, that is something that actually causes some real strenuous and major problems here in the country. And the people are the ones that are affected the most by this. Why these shutdowns keep happening? Well, the official date here in February, that date, I don't know what that date is exactly, but I do know that they are supposed to bring the debt back up for a vote. sometime here in the month in February. And so, what we have to be thinking about now is it okay to just continuously, run around and just keep saying we're just going to pass a resolution, doing the continual resolution, which I think has happened now for the last maybe 15, 20 years, instead of actually putting a budget in play and letting everything be about that. So Congress relies on short-term funding patches, and it creates constant brinksmanship. So what that means is normally, the party in charge is the one that gets all of the debts, the debits, and the credits. They get them both because they are the ones that's responsible for what's happening today in the economy. They're the ones responsible. So if they're responsible and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, again, we have a problem that we really need to get solved. And we need to get this solved because this is putting all of us in a bad spot. And so when the bills that they're going to fund in this $1.2 trillion bill are the defense, domestic programs, health and human services, veterans programs, and federal operations. So that's the operation of the government. Why is it that it's going to cost $1.2 trillion to do this? I mean, I really want to know, what do some of you think? Do you really think that passing a $1.2 trillion bill is going to be something that's going to make everything okay? My answer is no to that. It's not. So the impact on everyday people, your tax refunds are delayed, federal workers are unpaid, SNAP and WIC disruptions, small business loan freezes, national parks and offices close. Now, when we talk about those tax refunds, they're doing something way, way different. You see, most of you feel like, if you've worked, then you deserve to get your money. So, again, if agencies have laid off an enormous amount of workers, especially the personnel that they call non-essential, where they're furloughed, then that's not going to do you guys, that's not going to do any of us any good when it comes to filing our tax returns. And truth be told, I do think this is why people are trying to file tax returns right now. They're trying to do tax returns right now. Um, when it comes to the federal workers unpaid program, I need you guys to give me 1 second. Let me hold on here for just a second. Okay. And so when we talk about these federal workers that are unpaid, I mean, again, that adds another problem. That's a kitchen table issue because people are not able to feed their families. So with all of this, and we talk about, oh, I forgot, the political dynamics. You got spending versus cuts. Okay. And we're talking about where fiscal responsibility was actually pretty good here in the country at one point. Still wasn't beneficial to all, but it was. And so I think that when we talk about no one wants shutdown blame in an election year, well, the Republicans are here again. And they're here at a point to where I'm sure that people are pretty much getting tired of this thing, especially when they're in control of government because they can't lead the government. Anytime you can do the things that they're doing, and you're able to just clearly get away with doing the wrong thing, it's not good for people, it's not good for the constituents. But what I think this political discourse is doing is that it's actually forcing an enormous amount of people to not take the time to actually reach out to their representatives and let their voices be heard. That's more than your civic right to engage with these politicians and make sure that they know that the things they're doing is causing you an enormous amount of harm. There's nothing wrong with telling them that. Nothing. As a matter of fact, I encourage each and every individual to take that time, whether it is writing a letter, whether it is sending them an email, just do it. Just do it, just like Nike, because everything that's taking place right now is going to actually look foreign to an enormous amount of people here in the US. So let's talk about the US deficit and debt. Plain budget breakdown. Plain breakdown. Deficit versus debt. Deficit is your yearly overspending. Debt is the total accumulated amount. Again, the debt is your total accumulated amount. The folk that are in the White House right now, they do not mean most people any good. What we're saying is we're seeing these people, um, take the bare benefits and essentials that are needed by the folk that are way down on the bottom, and they're making sure that they do not have what they need. So if they don't have what they need, how is it that they can sit to his or her right or left and plain and simple let you know that the things you want are not viable? That's crazy. That is just totally crazy. So, where the debt comes from? The debt comes from military, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, tax revenue gaps, and emergency spending. Now, when it says debt comes from military, the military now has the largest budget it's ever had. DOD has got like trillions of dollars as a budget. And so it allows them to do pretty much an enormous amount of things. This is contributing to the debt. And it's contributing to the debt in the wrong way because nobody wants to get confused as to why the military has got not only so much money, but what are they doing with it? Is there a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse? I can say 9 times out of 10, yes. And that being because you know when you don't have somebody that's ever had a job like that before, you're expecting a miracle. You're expecting something that's definitely not going to happen. You're not if you're expecting good results, that's really good. I mean, I have to stay neutral on that because if this person's never had that kind of a job, and this person cannot, and I repeat, cannot get the military to the level that they wanted to get it to off the net. I'm saying across the water. What they're doing is they're actually allowing um, these different operations that are going all around the country, many different places that are not necessary, but they're creating havoc and starting situations that are going to put the military in so many different situations, which I call distractions. They're causing these distractions, so the people cannot focus on the real serious situations that are actually happening here in the country. So the best way I think to start issues is with the military, which has the largest budget. When we talk about Social Security being a part of that deficit slash budget, that debt when it comes to the government, Social Security taxes are supposed to be collected from each and every paycheck. That's each and every paycheck. Now, when we talk about Medicare, Medicaid, remember the last government shutdown, the one that was just ended in December. Remember that one was about health care, which included Medicare, Medicaid. Now, in this case, with Medicare, Medicaid, they're set strictly for those that are in the lower income bracket to have affordable health care. Well, I think it's safe to say that as this administration is trying to end Medicare, Medicaid, they're not actually looking at the ramifications in which that would have on not just our economy, but the global economy. Again, messing with Medicare and Medicaid is going to alter and play with the healthcare benefits when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, where these people would not be actually allowed on the program. They're going to change the stipulations of the program, and they're going to have people just doing things in a really different way. And so, again, as we talk about tax revenue and we talk about the emergency spending, these are two bills, these are two parts, of this funding that I honestly do not think are going to do the things that they're supposed to, because signs are pointing to accomplishing a different goal that's actually a part of our system that's abroad. So, why does this matters? This matters because higher interest payments, especially when you can't get money or when you got that credit card, and credit card interest rates have gone up no matter what the card is all around the country. Not good. Um, when we talk about less money for services, I don't know too many people that'll be doing something like this with less money for services, because when it comes down to that, we've got a situation where uh, you know you have to charge and you have to give people great great services, but now you're going to be paying more money for less services. And this is all a part of what has been a part of a plan that's been established here in this administration as to running this government. So basically, as they say, they're chopping off fat when what they're actually doing is they're causing issues with the entire operational system of this government. And so it's up to the people primarily to find out, because in different states things are different. And so for people to get an understanding as to what is being taken away from you and why this is happening, because this should not be happening. Now, what's happening when it comes to the healthcare plan, just so we can talk about that part now, is there's a lot of states, and remember, most of the southern states or red states, as you want to call them, I think all of them actually, they were not a part of the exchange via the Affordable Health Care Act. And so when you had a lot of these states that include states like California and New York that actually bought into the exchange and did things the way they were supposed to be done, they actually had the opportunity to control healthcare and its cost for its patrons. Now, I'm here in Georgia. Georgia just started this new program, at least it's new to me because I had never heard of it before. But they're doing something that's on the lines like some of these other states that's creating affordable health care for the patrons. So I think that that's a pretty good thing to do. But I don't know the whole entire details of this program and how it works. But I do know that it's one that they're advertising, and it's definitely one that I think we should look at to see what's the details on it, what's the good, what's the bad, what's the ugly, and if it's really something that's affordable, because affordability means more than you can imagine. So let's talk about the low-term economic impact. The low-term economic impact is that people go, you get scathed, but only briefly. And so, but I think any scathing is too much. But if you scathe, then it's briefly. What that means is, as they're going through this awkward situation that's actually done because of politicians right now, um, you just got to make sure that you look and find everything that you can be a part of and how it's going to benefit you. And with the political divide, um, we've got cuts versus revenue increases. Okay. And I wish someone could tell me about the revenue increases because, when you cut things from these programs, but you talk about revenue increases where you're charging more for smaller services, that doesn't make sense. You cannot, you cannot compute that because that doesn't make sense. And so let's go over more and let's talk more about healthcare and the Affordable Healthcare Act subsidies. These subsidies are discounts that lower insurance premiums, right? So when you have your premiums and your premiums are much lower than where they used to be, they're affordable, and you're still getting more services than you had before. So you're doing that. That turns out fine. So in that whole process, the only thing that you have to keep doing is you would have to just keep living, paying your part, and life is great. Well, the influence on someone else's campaign or their functions as to what they're trying to do, that don't work for a lot of people. And that causes people a lot of issues. And so this matters because when we think about healthcare and we think about the COVID era, and we also think about the political decisions that these folk are trying to take away when it comes to the Affordable Health Care Act, these things are more than just mutually exclusive. These things are very effective, but they're effective in a negative adverse way for people that are on the lower spectrum of the income levels. And so what that means is if your premiums start to rise, you're not going to see a doctor. If your premiums start to rise and you can't afford it, you're most likely going to stop insurance. So, as you see, it's bad either way, but this kind of bad, I don't know, they have to do something that's way different in order to ensure that things are actually done in the best way. But they're not doing that. And so when we talk about the real world examples, let me just read some of these off to you and let's see if it resonates with any of you. Um, um, Premiums could double or triple without subsidies. Self employed and rural communities are heavily affected. Now, we talk about two things. When they double and they triple in those premiums, you're not making enough money. You can't afford it. Therefore, you don't go to the doctor. Self employed and rural communities heavily are affected by this because one, they don't have a healthcare facility that's close to them, and they also have situations to where they just they're just going to be struggling just to even survive. The political debate is make subsidies permanent versus reduced government roles. Now, I can agree with that because if you make these subsidies and you make these permanent, then what happens is that people never have to worry about the premiums fluctuating, going up and down, and they're worrying about if they're able to afford it or not. Now, it's saying that there's this one political person that's actually thinking about just not making this work ever again. And they're not thinking about how this affects everybody. Now, we're finding these folk are actually going over to work more inside the Capitol building because it's somebody that they owe that they can't afford to pay. So, I just wish that when it comes down to the Affordable Health Care Act, that if we're going to do anything to make this permanent, and if those that's got voices from the political spectrum, that is, whether you're in the House, the Senate, or if you're in your state House or your state Senate, you guys should be doing the right thing and making sure that people can afford health care and everybody has the right to go to a doctor. But by sitting there and throwing rocks, hiding your hands, and saying you didn't throw anything, knowing that what you're doing is damaging, I have a problem with that. I have a major problem with that. And my problem is the people. What's going on with the people that would allow something like this to happen? I mean, we're all human. Everybody deserves that right of actually dealing with their healthcare or their healthcare issues due to their liking. But when you're taking choices away, I mean, that's really faulty. I mean, that's about as salty and as ugly as it can get. Because when you start being like countries that have dictators and they don't allow people to get the things that they need, how many of us here in America are going to continue to sit back and let this kind of assault happens and continues? Because this is an actual assault. So let's talk about this road to the midterm. This road to the midterm means more than people can ever imagine because what's actually happening here is, when we're talking about changing the House and the Senate, could be a bad thing for the person that occupies the White House. Now, everyone has their own political views and values, and they're very much so respected. They are respected. But even in that whole process, do you really, do you really want to be a part of something that actually oppresses and represses people by denying them their right? I don't see that. I don't see that. And what I also don't see is for somebody to come out the blue maybe and come up with this big beautiful idea like they did the big beautiful bill that can actually change the trajectory of this. Maybe they can do that. So with the midterm elections, what's at stake? Are the House and the Senate control and the state and local powers. And so primarily, they're not the same, but they are the same. And they are mutually exclusive. You got the US and you got the state. So, one could have more options than the other, but that's the premise of being a state because you actually have the opportunity to make the lives of your people that much better. And so most people, most of these special elections that are happening right now, there's something brewing from the political perspective, and that is, Democrats have actually won um, uh, all of these special elections that have taken place so far. And so the gap in the seats that's in the Senate has gotten closer by two. So with that being said, we'll just have to continue watching as we want to do our menus. Also, uh, when we do all of our things that's actually going to um, take control, just take control and do what's necessary for the people. Because right now the people are not being served, and that includes myself. Um, we're not being served, and what's happening is we're having so many things taken away from us, and it's like there's nothing that we're actually able to do at this point. It's kind of rough when you think about it, and you think about you saying you being in the United States of America, but it's true. So the thing is, there's no time to sit there and blame one or the other. Get the job done. And these people are not getting the job done. The key voter issues right now at this point are the economy, healthcare, immigration, reproductive rights, public safety, and voting rights. Now, with these, the problem that's actually taken place from a conservative individual, they truly believe that the more that they can take away from the regular public, that they're fine. But what I'm trying to understand is why is it that the people out here in the public are not doing their due diligence and removing these people because they clearly are there working on behalf of that top 1%. They're not working for the people. When are people going to do what they need to do? So the issues, economy, healthcare, immigration, reproductive rights, public safety, and voting rights. With those should actually bring about an enormous amount of change when it comes to all of these different um, houses or voting blocks, whatever you want to call them, in this election. When we talk about the economy, we want to talk about having the economy work for everybody. The economy does not work for everybody. It's only working for a few. And those few that it's working for, those people already have all the money that they need. Now, nobody's made me the police or the moral patrol. No one's made me the police of that. But I do want to call that out. That what I'm saying with that is that that's causing an enormous amount of people an enormous amount of problems. When we talk about healthcare is one that's got a different ring to it. Healthcare, from what I look at it from this perspective. This is how a lot of those countries that are led by dictators, this is how they maintain population control. Because as long as you don't have health care, you get sick, you just die. But we've got to find a way to keep something like that from happening. When we talk about immigration, that's really hot right now. And we all know that when it comes to immigration, um, they're doing an enormous amount of deportations, legal or illegal. And there are the states that have fought back, they primarily aren't messing with those large states or that's got large cities inside of them. But if you're one of those small states, they're just going to try and bully you. Uh, let's talk about the reproductive rights. Reproductive rights are those things that actually have come now. I think it's been like maybe 2, 3 years now since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. That, again, is something that I really don't understand because the people that voted for this to happen is crazy. The next thing is public safety. We talk about homeland security, we talk about police. They too have a very large budget and they're able to do all of the things from a functional perspective that they can do. Now, my thing is, I think they too have too much money. And if money was actually spread it out evenly to do many facets of things in life differently, then we'd be talking about something totally different. When we talk about voting rights is important because they're trying to take away voting rights, especially for particular known source wise of Black folk and where they are. I really don't think that this is one of those things that has to turn out this way. So with the midterm election, I think 9 times out of 10, uh, these people are going to get out and vote. They're going to get out and vote. And when they get out and vote, I think they're going to vote in droves and they're going to actually change things. I will tell you this, I do not support a Republican Party and I do not support a Democratic Party. I myself am totally independent of all of those because I don't think either of them do me a good service. But I will say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, everything that has a D in front of it for the midterm election, I will be voting for it. I will be voting for it unequivocally, unapologetically. Yes, everything that has a D next to its name going down that list when I go vote, I'm voting for it. So the midterm elections, they matter because they determine who writes the laws. They shape the next 2 years of national policy. Now, when we're talking about writing the laws, now if the Senate and the House switch to a larger majority, especially on the Senate side, then they could write bills just on the clear um, majority rules. But when they want to manipulate the system and they want to change things, they go on uh, this thing that they agree to do. That for me, for the life of me, I don't know where that came from because it does not, and I repeat, it does not serve the people well. So let's bring this all together. And how we're going to do that is we're going to talk about policy versus personal. And when we talk about policy versus personal, our policy is personal. It's like these policies are supposedly written for each and every individual. They're written to betterment the country, to betterment the laws, and to make things right for each and every individual as we supposedly, quote unquote, stay free. That is not happening. Understanding empowers communities. And so the engagement shapes the outcomes. So where we are with this is when we bring this all together, we know that policy is personal. We know that understanding empowers communities, and we also understand the engagement shapes outcomes. So what really has to happen here is everybody needs to get out and vote, and everybody needs to understand what their communities are about, and they need to build on them. And we need to engage the shapes of the outcomes by actually staying engaged from a civic perspective. If we don't do that, then we can't expect these people to do what they are supposed to do. So, with that being said, I just hope that as we look at how this is shaping up, and we know that the debt for the country is getting larger and larger under this administration, we know that everything that we're used to has changed. Everything that we want to change has changed. Now, is it okay to ask those 23 Democratic senators during this last government shutdown? Is it okay to ask them what was their real purpose for voting to say you're not going to leave the government shutdown, but you're going to go to a place where nothing is going to be reality about this. Nothing is going to be real about this. And we're all facing consequences that, we're in unfound territory. There's an enormous amount of us that now have to make sure that we sit down and we look at each and every penny that we spend and how much money we can save. We look at those things. That's not right, but it happens. It's not right, but it happens. So to speak up on that, why is that considered to be wrong? I really want to know. Why is that considered wrong when, the embetterment of each and every individual that's here, we're doing things for us. We're doing things for us. And so if we're not coming together and unifying, and we're not building and building out the way we should, then I think that's something that we should all be looking at as a considerable thing to do. Because everybody again. Everybody has their rights to pick and choose and say and do the things that they do. Hands down. My thing is, if what you're doing and you're knowing that it affects the majority and not the minority, that's a problem. That's a problem. So, this is Black History Month, and what I would like to do is to do this reflection today when it comes to Malcolm X. As we honor Black History Month, I want to take a moment to reflect on a man whose voice still echoes through our political and cultural landscape, Malcolm X. Malcolm was more than a leader. He was a mirror. He forced America to confront the truths it tried to avoid. He challenged the systems that relied in silence. He demanded dignity in a world that tried to deny it. And he taught Black people to see themselves not as a problem to be solved, but as people with power, purpose, and potential. What made Malcolm X extraordinary was not just his fire, it was his evolution. He showed us that growth is not weakness. Changing your mind is not betrayal. Expanding your worldview is not surrender. Malcolm's journey reminds us that liberation is both personal and collective, and that truth must be pursued even when it's uncomfortable. In a time when political discourse is fractured and trust is fragile, Malcolm's legacy calls us back to courage, clarity, and conviction. He reminds us that speaking truth to power is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of love for our people and our future. May we honor him not just with memory, but with action. So, in closing, I want to thank you all for being here. Um, I think you guys understood the gist of what's happening here with this political discourse and the effects that it's having on each and every community. What I will say to you, and I suggest to each and every individual, is to learn who your representatives are, both state and federal, and do your due diligence and find out what these people are doing. Because I can guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, they do not deserve to be in office. They do not deserve to be in office because they're all paid to represent the interests of someone that is against each and every last one of us. And this is how we should vet each and every last one of these folk that are running for these political offices and call them out for who and what they are. Because when people start to exploit you because they think they can, they continue. And I say that because when you look at both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, neither of them have done anything to make you say that you want to be a part of this. But I do know I want some change. I need that change to happen like as soon as possible. And so I will tell you, for me, I'm not voting with my hand on my nose. I'm not clipping my nose. I'm voting, and I'm telling you specifically, I am voting for everything that's got a D next to it because I need to have change in both the House and the Senate. Those folk that are there, they need to be gone. They need to be gone. And this ain't about nothing else but the disservice that each and every last one of these people have done. But that decision is up to you all. And I hope you all make the wise choice and realize it may be tough. But if it's tough, that does not mean that you can't do your civic duties and still be happy. Now, for those of you that are watching on all 8 of our streaming channels, if you have not yet, I would appreciate your support. If you would please go to our YouTube channels. Please click the subscribe button and enable all notifications. That will be that little bell that pops up. Enable all. And every time we do a show, or every time there's a post on the YouTube channel, you will get the notification. So, in closing, as we close tonight's conversation, I want to leave you with this truth. Politics is not something that happens out there. It is something reserved for Washington insiders or people who speak in sound bites. Politics is the price of your medication. It's the stability of your job. It's the safety net your family depends on. It's the future your children will inherit. When we understand the system, we can hold it accountable. When we understand the stakes, we can vote with purpose. And when we understand our power, we can change the direction of this country. One community, one conversation, one election at a time. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for choosing truth over noise. And thank you for being a part of our community that believes in clarity, honesty, and collective. Okay, so this is America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles Zackary King, and I will see you next time on America in Black and White, where we will continue to color conversation